Juliana stood outside her childhood home in suburban Philadelphia, staring at the small white house that once felt like the whole world to her. Now it looked tiny, especially because she owned every building on the street. She whispered to herself, 14 years, and it still feels unreal. The invitation to her sister's wedding sat in her purse like a stone. She breathed in slowly and said, "Before I tell my story, I'd really love to know where you're watching from." She looked into the imaginary camera and added softly, "Please hit like and subscribe, if you've ever been betrayed." Growing up in Bryn Mawr, Juliana believed her family was perfect. She remembered the two-story house with a white fence and how her father, David, always left for work in the same navy suit. Her mother, Linda, taught third grade and repeated one phrase, "Family first, always and forever." Juliana had a younger sister named Megan, who sparkled in every room she entered. People loved her instantly. At dinner one night, Linda smiled proudly and said, "Megan has such a bright spirit." Juliana nodded politely, even though she often felt invisible next to her sister's effortless charm. Juliana was different from Megan in every way. Her achievements came through discipline. Straight A's, soccer captain, tutor at the library. When the acceptance letter from Temple University arrived, her father surprised her by smiling wide. "You earned this," he said, patting her shoulder stiffly. Her mother baked her favorite chocolate cake. But Megan's hug felt too tight, her voice too sweet. Later that night, Juliana overheard her whispering on the phone. "She gets everything so easily." The word "golden child" echoed through the wall like an accusation. Juliana sat on her bed, wondering why success felt like a crime. Her boyfriend, Daniel, was the only person who truly understood her ambition. He studied pre-med at Penn and always told her, "You're going to change the world." He joined her family dinners, helped her father with the lawn, and made her mother laugh with compliments. Juliana worked part-time at a bookstore to save for college. Her manager, Mrs. Harper, often said, "You remind me of my daughter, sharp and disciplined." Those quiet evenings among books felt peaceful. Yet every time Juliana returned home, she caught Megan watching her with a strange mix of envy and something darker. Juliana's grandmother, Grace, was the only one who noticed the cracks forming in the family. During their weekly coffee meetups, Grace would sip slowly and say, "Megan seems troubled lately." Juliana brushed it off, but Grace insisted, "Jealousy is a quiet disease, sweetheart." Still, Juliana focused on her future. Finals were coming, graduation was close, and she was preparing for a summer job at a law firm. She didn't notice how Megan's resentment grew each day. She didn't hear the whispered comments, didn't see the careful planning in Megan's eyes. She had no idea her sister was building a trap. Spring arrived early that year, bringing warm air and soft sunlight that made everything feel hopeful. Juliana was counting down the days. Just 62 until graduation. But while she focused on finals and planning her future, Megan's world was falling apart. Her boyfriend, Kyle, caught her kissing another boy behind the school gym. The shouting in the parking lot echoed across campus. That night, Megan burst into Juliana's room, mascara running. "You flirted with Kyle at the carnival," she screamed. Juliana blinked in shock. "What?" "Megan, I barely talked to him." But Megan only cried louder, playing her role perfectly. 3 days later, Juliana came home to find her parents sitting stiffly on the living room couch. Her mother's hands shook as she held a brown envelope. Her father's jaw tightened the way it did when he was hiding anger. Megan sat between them, eyes red but triumphant. "Sit down," her father said coldly. When Juliana opened the envelope, her heart dropped. Inside was $3,000 in cash, printed deposit slips with her name, and fake messages bragging about stealing from her parents. "This isn't mine," Juliana cried. Megan whispered, "Please tell them the truth," acting scared and fragile. Juliana tried explaining everything, but her parents' faces were blank and cold. Her father said, "We trusted you," while her mother whispered, "How could you do this?" Juliana begged them to check with her teachers, her manager, anyone who knew her. But Megan wiped her eyes dramatically and said, "She's been lying to everyone." When Daniel arrived for their study night, Megan showed him more fake messages, explicit ones that made Juliana's face burn. Daniel looked at her like she was a stranger and stepped back. "I don't even know you anymore," he said quietly before turning and leaving the house. Mrs. Harper from the bookstore called during the chaos. Before Juliana could answer, Megan grabbed the phone and put it on speaker. "Mrs. Harper," she said shakily, "Juliana has been stealing from the register. I didn't know how to tell you." Juliana felt her entire world collapse in minutes. Mrs. Harper sounded heartbroken. "I trusted you, Juliana. I'm so disappointed." Her father began stuffing Juliana's belongings into trash bags. "Get out," he said, "and do not come back." As Juliana stood trembling, she saw Megan watching her with quiet satisfaction, the tears now gone from her eyes. Grandmother Grace rushed over when she heard Linda crying over the phone. She stood between Juliana and her parents, shouting, "This is not like her. Something is wrong here." But her father pointed toward the door. "Leave, Grace, or I'll call the police on both of you." Juliana couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her mother sobbed, "You need help, sweetheart. You're dangerous." The ultimatum was clear: leave immediately or face the police and charges that would destroy her future. Holding 2 trash bags of clothes, Juliana looked up and saw Megan at the window, smiling. That night became the darkest of Juliana's life. She drove her old car to a Walmart parking lot and sat there trembling under the flickering lights. She counted her money. $247.18. That was everything she owned. She whispered, "How did this happen?" The phone calls to Daniel went straight to voicemail, every attempt more painful than the last. Her best friend Sarah finally texted, "My parents said I can't talk to you anymore." Juliana stared at the message until her vision blurred. It was shocking how fast a life built on discipline and honesty could collapse in just 1 hour. At 3 in the morning, a Walmart security guard tapped on her window. "You can't sleep here," he said gently. Juliana nodded, wiping her eyes. She drove to a truck stop off Interstate 95 and parked between 2 large trucks. The bathroom became her temporary home. She washed her face when no one was inside and tried to look normal using paper towels. By the 3rd day, every job she applied to had rejected her. "We're not hiring," they'd say after checking her name. Juliana whispered to herself, "Someone please believe me," but no answer came. On the 7th day, someone finally found her. Her grandmother Grace pulled up beside her car at a rest stop and knocked on the window with tears in her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you," she whispered, pulling Juliana into her arms. They cried together for several minutes. Grace handed her $500 and a small paper. "This is my cousin Anna's address in Newark. She will help you." Juliana wanted to beg, "Let me stay with you," but they both knew her parents would come after Grace if she did. "You are not alone," Grace whispered firmly. The drive to Newark felt like crossing into a new world. Anna, a night shift nurse with tired eyes but a soft voice, listened to Juliana's story without judging. When Juliana finished, Anna simply said, "You can stay on the couch for 3 months. After that, you must stand on your own." Grateful, Juliana accepted. She found her first job at a 24-hour diner called Rosie's. The owner, Tony, didn't ask about her past. "Just show up on time," he said. Juliana worked the early shift, carrying plates and smiling through exhaustion as she tried to rebuild her life one day at a time. To survive, Juliana also took a second job at an Amazon warehouse. Her days became a blur. Diner from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., warehouse from 4 p.m. to midnight. She slept 4 hours, sometimes less. "You're a machine," her co-worker joked as she rubbed her aching feet. She lost 20 pounds from stress and cheap meals. But she forced herself to stay focused. "This is temporary," she whispered every morning while tying her apron. Still, some nights she cried quietly into her pillow, wishing someone would say, "I believe you." The silence hurt more than anything. Juliana enrolled in community college for night classes. She used cash from her tips to pay for basic business courses. The textbooks were expensive, but she searched thrift shops and found older versions she could afford. She studied during short breaks at the warehouse. Her notebook balanced on boxes while other workers smoked outside. But the peace didn't last long. After 2 months, Anna's boyfriend slammed the bathroom door one evening and shouted, "When is she leaving? I want my space back." Anna looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Juliana. He's just stressed." But Juliana knew she needed to leave soon. Exactly 3 months after moving in, Juliana packed her bags and rented a tiny studio in East Orange. The landlord called it cozy, but it was really a converted storage room with a hot plate and peeling walls. The lock didn't work, so she placed a chair under the door every night. She was robbed twice. Once when someone stole her second-hand laptop, and again when a man snatched her purse while she walked home. The police shrugged. "This happens often," they said. Juliana whispered, "I just want a chance." But the world felt cold and unforgiving. Because of the stress, Juliana's health began breaking down. A cough lingered for weeks. Her hands shook from too much coffee and too little food. Panic attacks struck suddenly, sometimes in the diner bathroom, sometimes behind warehouse shelves. Yet she refused to quit. "If I stop now, they win," she told herself. Then one morning at Rosie's, her hands trembled so badly that she accidentally spilled coffee on a customer's laptop. "I'm so sorry," she gasped. But instead of yelling, the customer smiled softly and said, "It's okay. Are you okay?" That simple question cracked something open inside her. The customer's name was Mark. He was a regular who always worked quietly in the corner booth. When Juliana started crying from exhaustion and stress, Mark closed his damaged laptop and said, "Sit for a moment. Just breathe." Tony was in the back, so Juliana sat down for 30 seconds and told Mark everything. Her family, the lies, the jobs, the fear. Mark noticed the coding book beside her. "You're learning programming?" he asked. Juliana nodded shyly. Mark tapped his business card on the table and said, "If you can learn basic Python in 3 months, I'll hire you." From that moment, Juliana became unstoppable. She kept her diner job but spent every free second studying. Library computers became her classroom. YouTube became her teacher. She practiced coding after midnight, typing until her fingers hurt. "Just 3 months," she whispered to herself each night. She built small projects, fixed errors, and refused to quit. When the interview day arrived, she showed Mark simple apps she had created on her own. He nodded in approval and said, "Welcome to the team." For the first time in a long time, Juliana felt something she thought she'd lost: hope. Juliana's internship at Mark's startup changed everything. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough for her to quit the warehouse job and move into a safer apartment. For the first time in a year, she slept without a chair under the door. Her hands stopped shaking. Her face looked healthier. At work, Juliana quickly discovered she had a natural eye for user experience. One afternoon, Mark said, "Your redesign cut customer complaints by 70%. The other engineers stared at her with surprise. Juliana smiled quietly, finally feeling seen for her talent instead of judged by false accusations. 8 months later, Mark's startup was acquired by a major tech company. Juliana's small stock options became $40,000 overnight. Even more shocking, the company offered her a full-time position as a junior UX designer with a salary of $90,000. When she received the offer letter, she whispered, "Is this real?" Moving to California felt like stepping into another world. Free food at work, clean offices, doctors on site. Her new apartment had air conditioning, a dishwasher, and windows that actually locked. Each night, she stared at the ceiling thinking, "This is what life is supposed to feel like." But success didn't erase the old wounds. The memory of sleeping in her car and begging for work still clung to her like a shadow. During lunch breaks, she started building a new idea, an app that would connect homeless youth to real resources. She named it Safe Haven. A coworker asked, "Why this project?" Juliana replied softly, Because I needed it when no one believed me. Investors rejected her at first, calling it too emotional, not profitable. But one woman, Melissa, a venture capitalist who'd once been homeless herself, leaned forward during the pitch and said, "I understand. I'm in." Melissa invested $2 million, allowing Juliana to leave her tech job and build Safe Haven full-time. Her team grew. The app launched in 3 cities, then 10, then 50. They connected thousands of young people with food banks, safe parking spots, crisis counselors, and employers willing to give second chances. When Safe Haven hit a $50 million valuation, Forbes listed Juliana in their 30 under 30. People clapped for her on stages, praising her resilience, her brilliance, her vision. But no one knew the full truth: the cold nights, the stolen food, the fear of becoming nothing. Success built momentum. Juliana bought her first house in California, then investment properties. Her accountant smiled and said, "You're on track to retire early if you want." But Juliana wasn't building wealth to sit still. She wanted to create safety nets for people who had none. Quietly, she funded shelters and youth programs across the country. Yet she still refreshed her old email sometimes, hoping for a message from her parents that never came. Grace wrote letters, telling her bits about home. "Megan married a lawyer," one letter said. "She lives in a mansion now." Juliana read it without emotion. Juliana later learned that Megan's perfect life began collapsing after 7 years. Megan had married Henry, a wealthy attorney from an old Philadelphia family. At first, she lived the dream she always wanted: designer clothes, golf club parties, charity events. But her old habits followed her. Small thefts became large ones. One afternoon, Henry's mother caught Megan stealing a Cartier watch. "Put it back," the older woman demanded. Megan tried to cry her way out, but there were hidden cameras. Henry hired a private investigator named James, who uncovered a long trail of lies: credit card fraud, stolen jewelry, and broken relationships. The most shocking discovery came when James found the old app Megan used to fake the text messages against Juliana. The files were still stored on her old laptop. He also recovered emails Megan had sent years ago bragging, "I finally got rid of her." When Henry saw the evidence, he said quietly, "She destroyed her own sister for nothing." James contacted Juliana to request a statement. "I don't want to reopen old wounds," she told him over the phone. But yes, she lied. She hung up and stared at the wall, wondering how much more damage Megan could possibly cause. Word spread quickly through Philadelphia's upper-class circles. Henry's mother told every friend, every charity board, every club. Megan was blacklisted. Juliana's parents learned the truth through church gossip. A woman at their service whispered, "Your daughter's story is in the Inquirer." When Linda read the headline, "Disowned daughter becomes tech CEO after sister's lies," the casserole dish fell from her hands. David sat down heavily in a chair, face pale. Grace presented them with every letter Juliana had sent her. "She wrote to me for years," Grace said gently. "You threw away the wrong daughter." Juliana's parents tried desperately to reach her. They sent emails, letters, messages through lawyers. Her assistant filtered every attempt. "Another message from your mother," she would say softly, placing it on the desk. Juliana never opened them. Her father sank into deep depression. Her mother cried often, neighbors said. Meanwhile, Megan moved back into the childhood home, unemployed, disgraced, and bitter. Still, she tried contacting Juliana with fake accounts, tearful apologies, and messages asking for money. One day, she even showed up at Safe Haven headquarters and told security, "I'm her sister. She needs to help me." The wedding invitation arrived months later, thick cream paper with gold edges. Megan was marrying another man, a salesman named Greg. Inside was a handwritten note. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Please come. Let's be sisters again." Juliana stared at it for a long time and whispered, "Sisters don't destroy each other." But she made a decision, not for Megan but for herself. She booked a private jet to Philadelphia, a penthouse suite, and a vintage car with a driver. If I'm facing my past, she said calmly, I will do it in strength. On the morning of the wedding, Juliana stood in front of the mirror inside her penthouse suite. A soft breeze moved the curtains as a stylist pinned her hair. She wore a fitted designer dress that shimmered under the warm light. You look powerful, the makeup artist whispered. Juliana only nodded. Inside, she still felt like the girl who once cried in a Walmart parking lot. When she stepped into the Bentley waiting outside, she inhaled deeply and murmured, "Let's finish this chapter." The car pulled away, carrying her toward the church she once called home. The church looked exactly the same: red brick, white columns, and a crooked bell tower. Juliana entered 15 minutes late, her heels echoing softly on the floor. Heads turned immediately. Whispers floated through the air like dust. That's her, the billionaire sister. Her mother's face went pale, then crumpled with tears. Her father stared with a hollow expression, as if seeing a ghost. At the altar, Megan stumbled in shock, clutching Greg's arm. Juliana didn't smile or wave. She simply walked to the back row and sat down, her expression calm and unreadable. Only one person's reaction mattered. Grace. The elderly woman turned, saw Juliana, and her whole face lit up. Juliana walked to her and whispered, "Hi, Grandma." Grace squeezed her hand tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she murmured. Juliana blinked back tears but held her composure. The ceremony continued, though it felt strange hearing Megan repeat vows about honesty and faithfulness. Greg kept glancing at Juliana, curious but not hostile. As the couple kissed, Juliana felt nothing. Not anger, not joy. Just the quiet realization that she no longer belonged to this family. At the reception, Juliana entered the country club alone. Conversations died instantly. Her mother rushed toward her near the restroom. "Juliana, please, we need to talk," she begged, reaching for her hands. Juliana stepped back gently. "I'm here for Grandma Grace. Nothing more." Linda sobbed, whispering apologies, but they sounded empty. Too late, too broken. In the mirror, Juliana met her mother's eyes and said calmly, "You chose Megan over truth. Over me." Then she walked out, leaving Linda trembling in silence. During dinner, Juliana's father approached her table. He sat without asking, hands shaking. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly. "I just want you to know. I think about you every day." Juliana opened her phone and showed him an article about Safe Haven going public. "This is what I was doing," she said. "While you believed I was stealing and doing drugs, I was building something to help kids like me." Her father stared at the screen, tears falling silently. For the first time, Juliana felt pity instead of pain. Later on the terrace, Megan approached holding a champagne glass. Her smile trembled with forced sweetness. "Juliana, thank you for coming. Maybe we can move forward now." Juliana didn't speak. Megan continued, "Mom and Dad are struggling. Greg is between jobs. Maybe you could help us." The request felt so familiar. Megan always wanting, never giving. Juliana finally said, "Actually, I do have a gift." Megan perked up instantly, but Juliana pulled out her phone and revealed a document. "I bought Mom and Dad's mortgage last year. They live in a house I own." Megan's face drained white. You own the house?" Juliana nodded. "I could evict them any time. But I never have. Because I'm not you." Megan's voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" Juliana stepped closer. "Nothing, Megan. I don't want anything from a person who smiled while my life collapsed." She turned to leave but paused. "You were jealous of my future. And look at us now, you destroyed your own." Megan stood frozen, clutching her glass like it was holding her together. Inside the reception hall, Juliana walked toward the exit. People stared, unsure whether to approach her or avoid her. She stopped near the door and said clearly, "I'm donating $1 million to a scholarship fund for displaced youth. It will be named the Grace Fund. The only person who never abandoned me." Grace gasped, crying joyful tears. Juliana hugged her tightly. Grace whispered, "You turned your pain into purpose, sweetheart." Juliana smiled softly, her heart swelling. She kissed Grace's forehead before stepping toward the exit, ready to close this chapter for good. As Juliana stepped outside, the sunset painted the sky gold. Through the windows, she saw her parents standing together, watching her leave. Megan stood behind them, eyes red, her expression a mix of shock and regret. For a moment, Juliana wondered how life might have been if truth had mattered sooner. But some things could never be repaired. The Bentley door opened and she slid inside. As the car drove away, she whispered, "This is the ending." Yet it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release, like finally breathing after years underwater. On the flight back to California, Juliana reflected on everything she had survived. She built a billion-dollar company, created programs to help families heal, married a man who understood her heart, and welcomed a daughter named Grace, honoring the woman who saved her. She knew her past would always exist, but it would never control her again. "Some families break you," she murmured. "But you can choose who becomes your real family." As the plane soared through the clouds, Juliana understood the truth. Her greatest victory was not money or success, it was peace.